Happy Wednesday.
Hey, Michael.
Hopefully your morning's going well. How's Ben today?
Bend, Oregon. It's beautiful. There's no smoke. It's nice, but
That
still inside working, obviously. So.
Yeah, and a beautiful place too. So what could be better than that? Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome everybody. I see some the crowd starting to come in. We'll get kicked off in just a couple minutes here, and excited to talk about technical SEO today.
Me too.
Good morning, Mobeen. If you want to drop in the chat where you're located at, feel free to. Would love to hear where our audience is tuning in from. All right. Well, I'm thinking we can probably get things started, Max, if you're feeling good. And then as the audience shuffles in, they can catch up on or catch a recording later if they missed anything that's super beneficial there. Hey, Kyle, Grace, morning. Webfor team, nice to have y'all here. Does that work okay for you, Max?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, let's get things started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Webfor's Digital Marketing Quarterly. I'm Michael Patrick Cortez, Webfor's marketing manager and a partner over here at Webfor, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. But that's not why you're here. You're here for our amazing guest speaker. But today we're going to be talking about what does technical SEO look like in 2023. We'll be joined by our guest speaker, Max Prin, who's the Global Technical SEO Director at Condé Nast. Want to make sure I pronounce that correctly there. Max is going to be sharing insights in the latest trends in technical SEO, best practices, and more. Custom tools and all sorts of fun stuff. In addition to the amazing work that Max is doing at Condé Nast, he's the founder of technicalseo.com, which is, in my opinion, one of the best free resources for the SEO community and just really extremely helpful for a number of areas when you're diagnosing technical SEO issues. So thank you, Max, for your contribution on that front. Max also recently spoke on technical SEO at the SimPDX Engage conference. And I'm extremely grateful and beyond excited to have him join us today to share more on technical SEO and his insights and what he is seeing in 2023. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Max. Max, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to just go ahead and get started talking about technical SEO in 2023?
Absolutely, and thank you, Michael. And you have a gift. Maybe you should have been a radio announcer or something. Love it. Love the energy. All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So yeah, really excited to talk about tech SEO. This is what I do. This is what I've done for a long time now. And as a quick intro here, just to put some context around what we're going to talk about. I've been doing SEO for about 10 years. Most of that, for almost 8 years, I worked for an agency called Merkle, and most of our clients were e-com, big retailers. And 2 years ago, I left for Condé Nast, which is a publisher. Not a lot of people know the name Condé Nast, but it is the publisher for Wired, GQ, Vogue, Allure, Glamour, Condé Nast Traveler, and a bunch of magazines like that. So obviously SEO is a little bit different. for retail than for a publisher. But I don't know. For example, we just launched the Vogue storefront this morning, so I get to still do some e-com like on those magazines websites. So anyway, putting a little bit of context around like everything we're going to go through, mainly almost 100% of what I do right now is in the context of publishers and magazines. All right, so let's get started. There you go. 5 years ago, I also presented at Engage in Portland. And 5 years ago, technical SEO was pretty much the same as it is today, and we're going to talk about that. But really, we had that laundry list of things that we had to do, like checklists, really making sure everything is crawlable and that Google can render it. We had that big change with JavaScript SEO a few years before that, and there was the kind of the big deal with all those sites like moving from classic HTML static, not having a mobile site, and all of that revolution, I want to say, and then going to mobile, going to JavaScript. So that was a big part of technical SEO, as well as the rest that really never really changed, like the best practices around like internal linking and sitemaps, duplicate content, all those things. And so we still have that today. This is still a big part of technical SEO. And 5 years ago, what's funny is that I was presenting at Engage and talking about AMP, accelerated mobile pages. And at the time, like obviously, if you remember, a lot of people hated it, a lot of people liked it. It was kind of like a big like debate. I was looking at it from really an external standpoint because, again, as I said, I was working with mainly retailers and Target and Walmart and Nike and all those brands that did not really have to worry about AMP. That was not a requirement for them for anything, right? They didn't have to be in the top stories. They did not really care about discover traffic, all of those things. So I looked at it really from a research standpoint, and I was talking about how website can be faster and how we can use AMP to create progressive web apps and progressive web AMP and all of that. So that was fascinating to me. And then really I was not too annoyed by it until I joined Condé Nast and 2 years ago, and it was time to get rid of AMP. And I will also talk about that today. But AMP, what a waste of time. I mean, really for everybody, because it was such a pain to implement, and now it's such a pain to get rid of it. So it's a big part of what I do today too, is removing AMP across 62 websites, and that's quite the challenge. So
we still sorry to chime in there and interrupt your flow. We still have a number of clients that we're dealing with the transition back to the main site and all the redirects and regex and all that cleanup that goes along with AMP. So it is a fun one.
Absolutely. All right. So yeah, 5 years ago, we were doing all of those things. And a year later, in 2019, my friend Paul Shapiro was presenting at MosCon, and he proposed like to redefine a little bit what is technical SEO. And it took us back to that classic like split, the traditional like SEO pillars, where we have the relevance, which is really associated like with the content strategy, and authority and trust, link building, whether you do that or not. That's one of the metric, right? Page rank, links, number, quality, all of that to determine authority and trust. And then the site infrastructure. And that was technical SEO. That was everything about the site, how the site is built, and again, crawl, indexing, and all of that. So this was really like the split of the SEO pillars. A little bit before that, though, Russ Jones gave us another definition, because this was incomplete, in my opinion, in Paul's opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, because what we were doing at that time, that was more than working with product and working with the devs on the site infrastructure. There was a little bit more than that. So yes, technical SEO is improving the site infrastructure, but it is more than that. And so, as I said, Russ Tech SEO Boost, I think a little bit earlier in 2017, told us that really any sufficiently technical action that you take to optimize like a result, to improve result, should be considered technical SEO. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because when I looked at what I've done for Merkle, the agency, or what I do today for Condé Nast, like my responsibilities leading technical SEO there at those companies, there was more, again, than just improving the site infrastructure and working on crawling indexing and schema and speed and all those things. A little bit more than that. So the way I look, based on that, the way I look at technical SEO, and when I try to explain my job, like to anyone, is really I split it into two things. What I would call like site health. So really, those are the fixes. Those are your classic technical SEO, where you will monitor the sites and do the crawls and make sure that nothing's broken, the redirect, the site maps, all of that. And you can add to that improvements where, for example, not having schema, it's not something to fix, it's an improvement. Adding markup, or like optimizing speed, or anything that is not broken but could be better, we would consider that like an improvement, and obviously optimization, right? The second part of that is tooling, and it's something that I've done for a long time as well, and I love doing that. It's still take care of technicalseo.com, even though it still belongs to my old agency. And yeah, tooling is really crucial to what I do, because not only optimizing the site, but I consider optimizing the time of my team, of the SEO team at Condé Nast, which is almost 30 people, is part of my job as well. And making sure that everybody can make the best out of their time by creating automations, by improving reporting, creating dashboard, custom tools, anything that we can do so we can save time and not repeat those tasks. So I'm going to talk about that as well today. All right, so let's start with the site health here. And this presentation is about what does technical SEO look like in 2023. So we're also going to talk a little bit about what is new. There's not like a ton, but there's a few things that I've noticed this year that I'll be happy to share here. So in general, I want to say it's the same old, right? We still have to take care of the robots.txt. It's a pretty straightforward protocol, right? But like, I mean, I'm sure you've looked at them, and some of them can be messy. And then at Condé Nast, we have 62 plus sites that we manage, and a lot of those sites, they are coming from different legacy platforms. We had some on WordPress, some on custom CMS, other stuff. And it turns out that the robots.txt is something that you always add like statements and disallow, allow statement to work with what you're doing, but you usually never remove anything, and so you end up with like those large robots.txt that are not super efficient. So it's still something that we do it pretty much on a weekly basis, I want to say. So and then yeah, XML sitemap, URL structure, optimizing the crawl, indexing, everything that I've mentioned already earlier, and page speed, which is not really new, like Core Web Vitals have been a ranking factor for a few years now. So something that SEOs also, at least on the reporting side of things, focus on. We're not all like performance engineers, but like collaborating with product and telling them, explaining like what the Core Web Vitals how they fold into the Google algorithms and things like that, and may or may not, based on a lot of factors, impact ranking. So same old, but a few things that were new this year, or at least slightly changed. For example, like a long time ago, I remember specifically not recommending myself trying to follow best practices, like having no index and canonical tag. And that applies to a lot of best practices in SEO. The rule is do not send conflicting signals to Google, right? Like that will confuse the algorithm, and that could just be bad. Even though both of the signals could have the same meaning eventually, like no index, we're telling Google, do not put that in the index. We don't want to see it in search results. The canonical is almost the same. We're saying like, don't want to see that in search result, you should send all the authority to that other page. So, but we were told not to use both at the same time. And as a publisher here, we find situations where we actually want to do that. And I was glad to see, so that was in April, like that John Mueller from Google was telling us that it might be actually okay to do both. And I think that's the right signal or double signal to send when you have syndication. So for example, when we have like an article on allure.com and we copy paste, basically we create a duplicate version of that article on glamour.com. The reason why we would do that is because maybe the audience of Glamour would love that to see that article. And then we have other channels. SEO is not everything, right? So maybe like the Glamour team wants to promote that article for the audience on email, on social media, everywhere else. But obviously we don't want that in search. But because we're sharing that article and promoting that article, we might get a lot of backlinks. And then, so we use the no index because we don't want that in the index. We don't want to compete and steal the traffic from the original article on Allure, but at the same time, we might gather a lot of backlinks to that Glamour version. So the canonical tag is the right signal to send to transfer, hopefully transfer as much as of the authority to the original one. So this was nice to see that it might actually be a best practice while it was not in the past. The next one, it's a tiny things, but if you deal with a lot of sitemaps, and that could be the case for even medium-sized websites, like when you decide to split, you can split your sitemaps to optimize that data that you get back from Search Console. So you get a lot of valuable information for each of the sitemaps, like if it has been crawled properly, the number of URLs that have been discovered, the last time it was crawled. So this is valuable information. And so you might decide to split your sitemaps into, here we do like month, year, month, and weeks. But like if you're a retailer, that could be by sections of your sites. For each category and subcategory, you could have a sitemap. I've seen that in the past. So you could end up with a lot of sitemaps that are all listed in your sitemap index. Now, technically, you can have more than 1,000 sitemaps listed in your sitemap index. The technical limits for that document is 50 megabytes uncompressed or 50,000 URLs. So you could have 50,000 sitemaps in your sitemap index. What we found out is that, unfortunately, the UI of Google Search Console, as well as the API, will only give you information about the last 1,000 sitemaps. And when I said the last, it's not the last chronologically, it's the last in the document. So as you can see here, for us, for that particular website, we have articles like going back to 1921. Like obviously, like they were not published on the web, but like they have been digitalized and like they are now available on the website. I think it's for the New Yorker, that newyorker.com, that goes back that much. And unfortunately, in our sitemaps indices, we add like we go back that far, and Google will only give us information about really chronologically speaking, the first 1,000 sitemaps, which is not ideal. So that's a small limit of Search Console. We fixed that a couple of weeks ago by splitting our sitemaps indexes. Like it's that simple. But just something I wanted to mention because again, the information is relevant and helpful in Google Search Console, and you won't get it if you have more than 1,000 sitemaps. The next thing, and if I could never talk again about AMP, I would. But here we are, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about here with what we're doing to remove AMP. It's actually a more positive thing to talk about. So we've started removing AMP. Well, the reason is, according to documentation and to Google, you don't need AMP anymore for anything. It is not a requirement for any Google feature. You don't need it for the top stories. You don't need it for Discover. You don't technically need it for anything. But With that said, we do acknowledge the fact that there is a correlation between like page performance, page speed, and discover traffic. And the assumption is that our accelerated mobile pages are faster than our normal pages. And it might be the case in some sites, in some sections, but like you can have AMP, really slow AMP. You can still have ads and tracking pixels and all the things that can slow down like an AMP URL. So we are being very careful with it. This is our, we don't want to lose discover traffic, obviously, as a publisher. On some sites, it is significantly more than the web search traffic. I'm thinking like France and Italy, in Europe specifically, like most, if you consider the Google traffic, Discover plus web, some of those sites, like most 90% of their traffic will come like from Discover. So that is something that we cannot really risk. So being very careful here, and with assumptions and assessing the risk, we decided to go step by step. And the idea here is, if Discover traffic is at risk, then what is the Discover traffic? So Discover traffic might be our newer content. So if content is older than 30 days, let's say, then maybe it's safe to remove AMP. So we started with that. We did that. We didn't lose any traffic in Discover or anywhere else for that matter. And so we are slowly reducing the amount of days that pages are available with the AMP version. So we went down to 7 days, still no traffic loss for most of the sites, because again, Discover traffic would be going towards like newer content, less than 7 days. And then after that, either we remove completely AMP or we do some testing on sections. We've been doing like alternate days. On Monday, everything published on Monday has AMP. On Tuesday, it doesn't. On Wednesday, it has. And we compare like those publishing dates and see if there is like a significant difference. So it is pretty successful. We're really hopeful that by the end of the year, we might not have AMP anymore. If you do read like Vogue or like Wired, AMP has been removed already. Now we're on final testing of Vanity Fair, for example, where AMP is completely off right now. We might turn it back on like for 7 days if need be. But yeah, so being careful, doing some testing, and remembering that, yeah, if you have Discover traffic at risk, then that might be a good approach to do it that way and do slow testing. All right. Page experience. I am extremely happy that Google is going to remove that report from Search Console. I wish that was the case already, because it was announced in April. They said by the end of the year. It's already September, so I'm really hoping that they do remove it by the end of this year. The reason why is that page experience report is extremely confusing. So if, like me, you work for a company that has a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people that are actually accessing Google Search Console, they might all like go to that report, right? Because I've been saying for years, like page speed is important, core web vitals are important, it's impacting rankings, it's a ranking factor, and all of that. Obviously, they are important, but to me, they're more important for the user experience than the actual rankings. And that particular report is extremely misleading. So here you can see two charts. They're for the same website and the same time frame. So what happened here is that the number of good URLs that was not that good to start with, obviously, started to drop. So maybe one of our core web vital kind of like went under the threshold of being good. It went from good to needs improvement, or even bad, maybe, I don't know. So we lost a lot of good URLs. The result of that is, if you don't have, let's say, for the sake of the argument, let's say you have 0 good URLs, and you will have 0 impressions to good URLs. That's what that chart, the top chart, is showing, is that because we lost some good URLs, we lost impressions to good URLs in general. It doesn't mean that you lose impression, and you can see that in the chart below. So I wanted to share that because, again, if you had to deal with explaining that chart to people or other stakeholders or colleagues, like, that's important to remind everyone that because that number of impression line might drop, it doesn't mean that the overall impressions or even the clicks to the site will drop as well. So good riddance. Once it's gone, like, it will be good. Unfortunately, they're also getting rid of the mobile friendliness testing tool, which is it's a bummer because there was some valuable information here. Large websites or even small one for that matter, it's always moving. New templates, new pages, new widgets, new things that improvements to the site in terms of like the user experience, the visuals. So you might have like, I don't know, like buttons too close to each other or too small of a font. All those like criteria that were returned by the mobile friendliness testing tool and the API might not be available anymore. And I think that's a bummer. So Google recommends to use Lighthouse, and there is a mobile audit as part of the Lighthouse like API, but it's not as complete. So maybe they will make improvement to that one before they get rid of the mobile friendly one. Not sure, but something to be aware of, especially if you rely on that and other tools or something like that.
Just interested in your take here, Max. Thank you so much. This has been so awesome so far. I'm looking forward to the rest of what you have to share. But the change with Interaction Next Paint INP being introduced to Core Web Vitals, and also the recent announcements around Core Web Vitals kind of being tied into the core algorithm and not their own they're not their own ranking factor. What is your thoughts around just the number of recent changes Google's made in that space on the algorithm front?
Yeah, absolutely. I think based on my experience, outside of Discover, that I will still call them like correlations. I've seen like a drop and decrease in Core Web Vitals like scores correlated with like Discover traffic. Unfortunately, I wish that was not the case, because I cannot see any correlation with what I would call like normal web search, right? Not Discover. And as a technical SEO, it is, or it was, frustrating, because if you're not losing any traffic in web, that means that, going back to the classic definition of SEO, right? That technical SEO, that means that you don't have any problem with like crawling or with indexing, that you don't have like a major like technical issue on your site, right? Because nothing really is changing or happening in web. And yet the volatility of Discover makes it a little bit harder. And that's something that I ignored for a long time, again, working with retailers. But then moving in-house at Condé Nast and seeing that, again, you take a website in one of our brand in France that would have like 10 times more Discover traffic than web, I cannot ignore it anymore. I have to look into it. I have to take that into consideration, into the technical editing, and Discover makes it a little bit harder. But Core Web Vitals was part of that, trying to understand like the impact there. So I would say today that as strong as, or as weak as the Core Web Vital ranking factor, like as big as that is, again, or small within the ranking algorithm, I don't see any impact on web search, for at least for us, but I do see it in Discover. So with that said, and I said somewhere on the slide here, I think like the impact on ranking should not be really the focus there and the priority. It's really about user. I would look at other user engagement metrics and bounce rate and things like that to understand if using the Core Vitals, the metrics, as an indicating signal or an indicators that of the user experience. That's what they were built for, right? But really the impact on ranking, that's something I would put on the side and really understand if we have a problem with user converting or like spending time on the site. I think that would be the real metric on understanding that there was a problem with the experience itself. With that INP here, and I have it on this slide. So yeah, it will be the new metric for responsiveness starting next year. You've probably, like everybody else, like received a lot of emails from Search Consoles for all the sites that you have access to. I think that was a little bit too early for Google to do that, but it's important to start working on that. For a long time, the metric itself was not working properly. That's why it was not launched, right? Everybody on the web was failing it. And now when I compare our metric to the competitors, I can see that we have a lot of work to do. And when I see that our competitors, they're not in the green. I don't see a lot of example of INP being in the green, but at least they're way better than we are. And that's a big focus for us right now. To fix what the issues that we have there. Again, a lot of things are, when you have advertising on your site and cookie consent, and the cookie consent is, you can have the same platform on GQ France and GQ US, but you have the cookie consent over there. And then there's all of the things that makes it a little bit more complex and at the same time very interesting and fascinating. So it's important. It's something I would look into, I would focus on, but not really from a ranking perspective, but more from a conversion and user experience perspective. And that might sound very cliche, but I think at the end of the day, that's just the truth. But one thing that I want to mention here is, so Crux, the Chrome User Experience Report, data is extremely valuable. That's the one I focus on, and I created that dashboard here where you can see for each of our brand. We can look at our performance. There's a new historical data endpoint in that API. It's free. There's no limit. There's a per second limit or something like that. So anyway, it's a great free API to use. And now you don't have to database that data. You can just ping it to get 6 months of data, which is great. Allows you to create those charts and see what's going on and how it's moving. So the data that you see, however, from the Crux API, the origin data, which is for the entire site, not one particular URL, and the data that you see in Google Search Console is completely different. It comes from the same place, from the Crux report, but it is packaged and delivered in a complete different way. In Google Search Console, what they are doing, they are aggregating and combining the data. So I'll try to use a very simple example. Let's say you have 100 pages on your site. You have one home page and then 99 articles, for example, right? You get a lot of traffic on your site, but most of the traffic is going to the homepage, right? Let's say 90% of the traffic is going to the homepage because you rank pretty well, but people don't click through, whatever. Again, like a fake example. So 100 pages, one homepage, 99 articles, and 90% of the traffic goes to the homepage. If you look at the origin data in Crux, and let's say your homepage is blazing fast, it's amazing, all the metrics are in the green, and this is awesome. So the Crux data will be very good because every time someone goes to the site, and again, 90% of them go to the homepage, then they will record a visit and they will record an experience that is aggregated into the Crux data. So when you look at that origin data, I will say it's very good because it's mainly 90% based on the homepage because 90% of the traffic goes there, and it's good. Now, Google, they crawl the website, they know you have 100 pages, and maybe they will take 2 or 3 of those articles and look for the Crux data, and then they will find out that it's actually really bad and in the Crux data, and they will say okay, so 2 or 3 of your pages here, they're already bad. I'm not going to even request and see if there is Crux data for the 97 or 96 remaining pages because I know they're all the same. It's the same template. So now I can tell you that you have 99% of your site that has bad pages. And that's how you get conflicting, they're both true. The data is true in both cases, but it's conflicting. On one end, you have Crux origin data that will tell you it's all good based on really the home page. And then in Search Console, Google will tell you 99% of your site, which is article pages, are pretty bad. I hope that makes sense. Again, there's nothing really to do about that except explaining to stakeholders and whoever works on that data. So both are useful. On one end here, what you can see, I think it's useful to understand the overall user experience based on what people are getting across the board at a very high level. On the other hand, the Search Console data will give you a good idea of which pages you should actually work on and improve.
Yeah, it feels like it would be helpful if they expanded the API to give you that origin data at that high level, but then also provide additional insight into the template level and how individual templates are performing.
Yeah, you can request like the Crux API. You can request at the URL level, but sometimes there's no data and there's no aggregation basically.
Yeah,
that Google Search Console does. So
awesome. Yeah,
based on the templates. All right, moving along. Something that is new and really exciting. So progressive web apps were a thing again 5 years ago. It was or a few years ago, I was talking about that. I was really excited about it. I think it's still something that we should look into to create that really seamless experience, app-like experience on our websites, and with a lot of features that exist, obviously like caching and then save to home screen. It looks just like an app you downloaded from the App Store, and then push notifications. And that was the big one. So push notification, which is one of the most appealing for website to retain and attract people and bring them back to your site outside of search. The big problem was that it didn't work on iOS and for many years. So like a lot of website, like because of the market share of iOS, then that's something that it could be like most of your traffic, or at least half, or something like that. So now Apple has announced earlier this year that push notification will work on iOS. So I think it's game changer in terms of the appeal for progressive web apps. And as you know, with AI, as Google, like SGE, and any other ways that we can possibly lose traffic, then that's something that that we should keep in mind to bring back users like to our websites. And if you operate like other channels like emails, I think like there are best practices there around like not being obnoxious to your audience and like the frequency of the email and all of that. Obviously, best practices around like opting in and opting out. And so all of that, I think, could be applied to push notifications. So should not even be a new channel really to learn from scratch. We can apply what the other marketing teams know to be successful there. So something to look into, I believe. I'll skip that because it's not accurate anymore. But yeah, I was hopeful that SGE would actually bring traffic to website, but as a user, like you probably want to actually read directly in there, right? So on one side you do SEO and you want the traffic to go to your site, but as a Google user, if you can save time and having everything directly in the SERP, that's kind of the challenge we're all working with here. So we'll see where that goes with AI, with the SG experience. But all right, so I'll be talking about tools now, which is extremely interesting to me and what I love doing. And it's all about efficiencies. It's really all about saving times. Obviously, I have a lot of fun building those tools, but at the end of the day, it's to save myself some time, save my team some time. So, and not just the SEO team. The idea is to put the data where it needs to be, in the right hands. So for example, we have our custom CMS at Condé Nast, and we have like integrations there. We have custom tools within the CMS. Think about like Yoast for WordPress. We have that kind of like a tool for SEO directly inside the CMS that we're working on. And one of the cool things that we can integrate is keyword data directly into the CMS. So something fun here that will not take any credit for it, existed at Condé Nast before I joined, but I find it extremely inspiring to create more of that. So when our editors will put their main keyword or something like that, their search phrase here it's called, in the CMS, then they get to choose, or then now they have to choose actually between evergreen and news. What type of article are they gonna write? So if they choose evergreen, then it will pull a search keyword, search volume from SEMrush in that particular case. If they choose news, it will give them a search trend, Google Trends data. And I find it extremely useful, so they don't have to go to a separate tool like a third-party tool, and they can again save time by having that data directly there as they write the article. The next one, it's less for the editors and more for the developers, the team. So this is a tool on technicalseo.com. This is Fetch and Render, but I've shared it at Condé Nast with devs because part of our job, right, is to technical SEOs to QA, right? Like you get your Jira tickets and all of that, and then you QA the implementation. But we can all save a lot of time if the devs can QA themselves, like the crawlability and the accessibility of the text for Google. So giving them a tool like that, I help them say, hey, you can fetch and render the page as Googlebot here, and you can look for that particular text that you had in that dynamic widget and see if it's actually in the rendered code. And if yes, then yes, I will double check, but you can be confident that you did it right in the first place. So yeah, less QAs for SEO, less issues to fix in production. So it's a win-win for everybody. So same goes for hreflang tags implementation, which we do a lot as an international company. Schema markup, rich result, like the rich result tool from Google is great, and to have developers using that directly when they're working on the implementation of schema is a huge save of time for everybody. So and third-party tool so I use Puppeteer to drive Chrome and render pages. All of that is, it's free to use if you need to develop the things. But yeah, the URL inspection API from Google Search Console is a good one as well, where you can get information there directly if we build a custom tool for the QA to be done by the devs directly. So yeah, a lot of optimization, time optimization to be done there. All right. Something that is that is new here and could be extremely useful is the new Google inspection tool user agent. So for example, in a lot of websites, we have stagings environments that are blocked, that are publicly accessible because the team is spread out. We're not always using VPNs and things like that. So anybody can go to the staging URLs. You don't need to be a Condé Nast employee or whatever, but it is blocked by robots.txt in most cases. And then, but that means that you cannot use Google tools because they will respect the rich result or mobile friendliness while it exists. They all respect the robots.txt. So implementing that allow or disallow nothing statement in the robots.txt for the staging environments for the Google inspection tool has been extremely helpful. The next thing here really quick is ChatGPT user. And since I put that screenshot together, there was also GPT bot that has been released where you can now block plugins. So ChatGPT user is for the ChatGPT plugins, as well as the OpenAI bot can be blocked. So they would not train their models or fetch your website via plugins to get that data. Won't get into the debate here, but that's a possibility, and a lot of publishers have been starting to do that. So, all right, automation and reporting, again, all about efficiencies, saving time. So, for example, monitoring the site. So that's something pretty basic, but that could be actually hard to do in an efficient way based on the size of the site or what really we need to do. So there was tools that are built for that, like Cat and King. And then there are the crawlers that are very they could be used for enterprise, but they are not the pricing of like, you know, the big enterprise crawlers, so Sidebulbs coming from. There can be like some automation that can be done here with scheduling, and I know Scrumming Frog that integrations with like Sidebulb 2 as with the Locker and so Google Data Studio. So a lot of things can be done for a very cheap here. But even better, to me at least, is monitoring very specific page templates. And this way, instead of crawling the site and using resources to do that, then we have when you have your page templates, you know what you expect. Is that page supposed to be like a 200, or is it like a 404? Like you can test your 404 pages, and a bunch of like different like criteria for those pages, and you can just monitor that every day for a few pages on your site and get like a email notification. So obviously that requires like potentially a lot of dev work, but if you're already building tools, if you're already playing around with those technologies and APIs and things like that, then that's something to that should be relatively straightforward to develop. So I listed here that there is a GCP free tier, meaning you can have like a virtual machine on Google Cloud Platform for free that runs 24/7. So you can have your cron jobs there. And then, you don't need a database, anything. Would recommend you keep 3 days of data so you can do the delta, and you have one more just in case. And then, a lot of free APIs out there. API.com doesn't just do XML or Whois, like there's more information about the website. You can integrate that into a custom monitoring system that will check a bunch of things every day, every week. It could be as simple as the SSL certificate or just like, a bunch of high-level information that could be useful to have notifications about if there was a change, or robots.txt changes and things like that, without having to pay for sometimes pricey solution.
So it feels like that helps you have more of a proactive approach to your technical SEO efforts, really monitoring on a constant basis rather than running an audit once a month, realizing there's a large-scale issue that you have to address, and then addressing it after you've already felt the impact.
Absolutely. Especially when you have a lot of sites.
Yeah. It's, like you said, monitoring 50 different sites that can, at scale, the time savings there can be.
And we're lucky. We spent 2 years migrating all of those sites to the same tech stack, the same platform, the same CMS. So now when we optimize, when we have like we change the recipe schema template for bonappetit.com, then that will be the same change on epicurious.com, because we're using the same template or schema template for those two recipe websites. So we can optimize that way by changing something on an article on GQ, will change it on Vogue as well, something like that. So
amazing.
Super quick on that. I would recommend setting up like Search Console bulk data export. It is new this year. It is extremely easy to set up in the settings, and the databasing is not expensive. It's querying the data that is expensive. So there's an article here by Daniel, who works at Search Console, with like some tips here to optimize that. But I would say it should be a no-brainer to start databasing, because that's extremely cheap again. And then you can figure out later if you actually want to query the data and assess the cost of that. Automating tasks, for example, I've built that at Condé Nast. We have a lot of what we call events, tentpoles, like the Met Gala. It's at night. Don't want to ask people to be in front of their computer taking screenshots instead of having live. So a lot of example like that of like events that we cover. Obviously, we have reporters doing their job at night, but like for the SEO team, they should not have to do that. So automating those tasks is a perfect way to save everybody's time and to already like save them to a Drive folder or something like that. So, and finally, reporting. So really leveraging the analytics API from Search Console to combine data. Here we're combining properties. We can look at the performance for France or the performance for GQ globally, extremely helpful instead of just one brand that you might see in, or one website that you might see in Search Console. Algo updates, same. So what we do here is like we overlay the algo updates with our clicks and impression. It's extremely helpful as well. Here, like we'll probably share the deck, but like in the recording, you can get those URLs. Would recommend going to technicalseo.com. You can access the JSON version of that page that you will see on techseo.com, and feel free, it's free to access. You can integrate that JSON feed directly into your custom tool, so you can do the same thing here and overlay those dates with your clicks and impressions. So saving time. If you see a big drop, you're like, oh, okay, what happened? And if you see like a green line because that was the core algo update last week, then well, that might not be a good news, but at least you know why quickly. Same thing here, leveraging like sitemaps API from Search Console and going further. So custom tool here that will check the robots.txt integration against the sitemap listings in Search Console. So always the idea is like to go further. What APIs can I use, and how can I augment the data to save time and to get more in one place? Same with Jira. You know, we have a lot of Jira tickets, so having a custom dashboard for just SEO using the API is extremely useful. It's also one of our KPIs, right? How many Jira tickets we open and close as a metric. So, and finally, and I'm sorry, I know we need time for Q&A, but like
I think we're good. Keep going. You're rocking.
1 minute on that is because I find it extremely fascinating, and that's what I'm working on right now, is again this idea of like taking what you have for free from Search Console and adding as much information as possible. So for example, I will take like the top 1,000 pages from Search Console as each month, and I'm fetching those URLs one by one and databasing like the author, the content type. Is it a gallery? Is it an article? Is it a recipe? What section of the site is it on? Sometimes you can just see that the subfolder, the subdirectory in the URL. For us, it's a little bit more complex, so I take that information somewhere else. Obviously, like published, modified date, word count, if you want that, core web vitals, content category, the classification, the entities, the tag that we use, the entities from Google, from the Google Language API. And then now you can reverse your analysis, the sentiment as well, you know, in the title. It's important for us too, you know, having like something sarcastic versus like a sad or like whatever, positive, negative, how does that impact CTR? You can look at your clicks and impression from a different angle than just like the URL itself. And so for the sentiment, I would recommend using GPT. GPT-4 is great for that. It can give you like negative, positive, but also like the tone, which could be a little bit more helpful in that particular case. So we can see here like critical or dismissive, informative, dramatic, enthusiastic. Like so, we can categorize those URLs and now say, okay, last week our CTR and our visits, like it was 50% more on like dramatic page titles than it was on enthusiastic or something, or the opposite. So extremely useful. Again, that would be correlation, but that's something that I think is fascinating to look into, and using those AI and technologies for that. And the final thing is generative AI, obviously using it like for content briefs and ideation, but also for explaining data. And here it's a tool like an assistant that I built, like called Frankie, on the platform I'm building for work. And now it's integrated with Search Console. So anybody can go and say, hey, what was the top page on Vogue last week? Or which country got the most clicks? Or can say like, hey, what is the data that I'm looking at here? And I would, and what you see here, that would explain like in layman's terms, like the core web vitals and what is CLS and things like that. So it could be extremely useful for that as well, to as an assistant, not just like a content creation, automated like text generation, but just more an assistant for SEO team and other people that may be related to the SEO work. And with that said, sorry I didn't leave a lot of time, but that's it.
Amazing, Max. Thank you so much for the presentation. That there was so much insight packed in there. And as we've discussed, the custom tooling piece is just a passion of mine, but something I'm also very deeply interested in, and love everything you're doing at Condé Nast with the version 2 of the tool you're building. It's really amazing. I know I had a few questions come up, but if you do have technical SEO questions, I know, Max, you have your Twitter profile there, LinkedIn. Is it okay if people contact you with questions from the event if they have any?
Absolutely.
Awesome. You also can scan the QR code on the side, and Webfor, me, or one of our technical SEO experts over here will be happy to follow up and chat more about your SEO questions that you have from the webinar. But yeah, let's open briefly for Q&A. And we have one question from Manoj here, but I am going to kick it off asking a quick question tying back to your experience in the news space for SEO. Just recent updates around EAT, obviously adding expertise, and then some of the author signals pulling in. Just recently, they started pulling in author titles into some particular areas of SERPs. It seems to be they are doubling down on that expertise piece and author experience, and proving your authoritativeness in that area is becoming more and more important. Is that something that you're seeing on your end? And how do you recommend news or other organizations optimize around their authors for technical SEO and kind of the infrastructure to make sure they're giving Google those signals?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's funny. I had a meeting this morning around the implementation of the author bylines for live stories where you have multiple authors, authors so you do a live story like for the Met Gala, for example, or on Wired for the Apple event like a couple of days ago, and you have like multiple editors, creating that feed on that live story. You can see that on major publishers like CNN, the New York Times, where stories are unfolding, and you have multiple contributors. So how do you deal with the bylines in that case? But to answer your question, the byline is extremely important. Obviously, like linking in the schema to the author page with the bio, with the picture, just proving that this is a real human being, and that author page will link to more article, creating that tree, that goes from one article to the author page, back to the other article, creating that authority for that person. I think after that, like Google and its knowledge graph would do the rest of the work, knowing when people are legit or not. And one thing like that we are looking into, and I guess that's also a question how to use AI, a good use case here. So for example, our product reviews, we have like hundreds of people that like review products, right? Editors, like could be reviewing office chairs or monitors on Wired, or like a mascara on Allure. So people it's real people doing the product review, right? And you want to make sure that is seen in the way they write the article. So what we're doing, we've not started yet, but we're building the script right now to scan at least a portion of our content and ask like ChatGPT or GPT, the GPT API, to give us like the prompt would be like, can you tell or not if the author has really tested the product? And because that's what Google is trying to do, they're going to do the same thing with the algorithm, right? Analyzing the text with natural language processing to see, is this like a review generated by GPT, or is this like someone that actually tested the product and wrote the review? And so we know our people review the product themselves, but we want to make sure that the text actually reflects that. And I think you can use a generative AI like to do that, or at least the NLP capabilities of GPT to do that. So a good use case for that. I think that's the key, is making sure, technically speaking, you link to the author links to the other article. and then the tone, the way the article, and I'm not an author myself, I'm never going to tell anybody how to do their job, but like make sure that it sounds like you've reviewed the product, or that you know what you're talking about. I guess that's it.
Awesome. Well, we're getting very close to time, and Manoj had, hopefully I'm pronouncing the first name correctly there, but Manoj had one question around INP, for improving INP for your websites. And I know that you could dive deep into that subject, but do you have any quick tips on how to improve INP for the website?
Not at this time, actually, because we have a team working on that, and I've been given like a little bit conflicting. I mean, they are digging into it. They are trying to understand what is affecting our websites. It's not something that I've dealt with myself directly, so no real useful information, unfortunately, that I can share. Sorry.
You're the detective and the analyst, and then the devs can figure out how to minimize or the impact on the user experience, right? And make sure we're not having any layout shifts or any craziness on that front. Yeah. Well, once again, thank you so much, Max.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you on Digital Marketing Quarterly, and just so excited to chat with you again and have you follow up after the Engage conference and share with our audience. Once again, if you have any questions about technical SEO, please feel free to stop by Webfor, fill out the form. We'll be happy to chat with you, scan the QR code, or contact Max on his socials. So I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. Bye, Michael.